English Step by Step, Past Continuous, Step 1. Remember, if you'd like to see more videos like this, click like. If you'd like to see my previous videos, click subscribe. If you'd like to make a request for a lesson, click request in the comments below. So in this lesson we're looking at past continuous. So when do we use past continuous? Well, we use past continuous when we talk about an action which was continuing at a point in the past, or an action which was in progress at a point in the past. We can also use past continuous for an action which had started in the past but was unfinished. So let's look at some examples. Example 1. At 7 o'clock they were having breakfast. In other words, this having breakfast was continuing at 7 o'clock in the past. I was having a shower when the phone rang. So the phone rang, that's a point of time in the past, and what was I doing? I was having a shower. So that was in progress when the phone rang. Example number 3. In March last year, we were still living in London. So we were living in London. That situation was continuing at a point in the past. What is the point? March. So in March, that's the point of time, we were still living in London. Example number 4. I was in the restaurant at 8 o'clock, but I wasn't eating anything. So here we have a negative example. At 8 o'clock, that's the point of time in the past. What was I doing? Well, in this case, it's negative. I wasn't eating anything. Example number 5 is a question. Were you sleeping when the phone rang? So the phone rang at a point in time and an activity was continuing during that time. So the question is, were you sleeping when the phone rang? So let's think more about the difference between past continuous tense and past simple tense. Well, with past continuous, and in this part of the lesson I'm going to write PC for past continuous. For past continuous, this describes somebody in the middle of an action. Past simple, this is used, well, we can also use the letters PS for past simple. Anyway, past simple describes a completed action. Examples: PC, past continuous. I was having a shower when the phone rang. And then we have another example with the same verb, but this time in past simple. I had a shower and made a phone call. So you can see, the first example is in the middle of an action. The second example is a completed action. Examples in 2. He was driving his car when the accident happened. So was driving, that's something happened in the middle of this action. The next example, he drove to work after breakfast. Well, this is a completed action. He drove to work. Example 3. The children were playing in the garden a minute ago. So, in other words, a minute ago they were in the middle of playing in the garden, in the middle of that activity. The next example is the same verb, but with past simple. The children played in the garden yesterday. So, that means it's in the past, it's finished, it's a completed action. We often use past continuous and past simple together in the same sentence. And in this way, we can describe how something happened in the middle of something else. In other words, when something happened, past simple, in the middle of something else happening, past continuous. Well, let's look at some examples. Number 1. While she was cooking, she accidentally cut her finger. Past continuous, past simple. Example number 2. They saw the pyramids when they were traveling in Egypt. So the first verb is saw, that's something that happened, and this happened while something else was happening. They were traveling in Egypt. so that's past continuous. Example 3. He fell asleep while he was watching the film. Fell is past simple. Was watching, that's the action which was continuing. Example 4. The plane was flying over the Atlantic when it disappeared. So was flying, that's the continuous activity. Disappeared, that's what happened. Example 5. What were you doing when you saw the accident? So in this sentence we have a question. Were you doing is the continuing activity. Saw the accident is the action that happened. The next example is a negative verb with the continuous verb. I wasn't sleeping when the alarm clock rang. In other words, the continuing action sleeping was not happening, but then the alarm clock rang, and that's something that happened. Now sometimes we can make a sentence with two past continuous tense verbs. For example, the teacher was talking but nobody was listening. So both of these activities were continuing at the same time, or we could say in progress at the same time. Example 2. It was raining, so nobody was walking in the park. Example 3. Tom was washing the dishes and Susan was drying. So these activities were continuing, or they were in progress at the same time. Now, some verbs are not normally used in the past continuous tense. In fact, they're not normally used in any continuous tense. Past continuous, present continuous, future continuous. Continuous tenses are normally used for actions like he was walking, they were working. So these are dynamic verbs. Many verbs do not describe actions, so we don't use them in continuous tenses. So let's look at some examples. The student didn't understand. Now, it sounds strange to say the students weren't understanding, because understanding is a mental process. We don't normally use this in the continuous tense. Next example. I knew the answer. The children wanted to play. I didn't believe the story. So all of these verbs are normally used in the simple form of the tense. Everybody loved the film. This book didn't belong to me. Did you need help? Did she prefer red wine or white wine? In this example you can see we don't say was she preferring red wine or white wine, because prefer is not normally a continuous tense, a continuous verb. What did the word mean? It depended on the weather. So, pay attention to these verbs and try not to use them in the continuous tense. So this brings us to the end of step 1. Move on to the video step 2, in which we'll look more at the form of the past continuous tense.